Welcome once again to another installment of You THNK Podcast. I am your host, Mr. Hughes. I am joined today by a legendary guest. You might have seen him last time with the 420 event that we have covered with HASHTORIA for the weekend of 420. Some of you may know him by seeing him in the community and just knowing how noticeable his face is. I'm not going to get too invested in introductions. I'm going to allow him to introduce himself. But before we do that, I just want to say thank you first and foremost for taking the time out to sit down with me and have conversation, my brother. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. I appreciate you, man.
Nah, you already know. And in the process, let the people know who you are.
Oh man, Ramin, everybody call me Pop, Executive Director of 211 Community Impact, founded by the legendary hip hop artist Dupre Kelly from Lords of the Underground, Councilman Dupre Kelly of the West Ward. I'm also the founder of RPM Consulting, where I work with stars and various people to build businesses. And I also am the owner of Creative Canvas, where I've published 16 various publishings from journals for children, coloring books, things of that nature. And, now I'm working on my own book.
Damn, bro. Damn. So in my mind, as I'm hearing you running it off, I'm like, yo, before we get to I, let's get to I. Like,
Right.
so when I first heard, when somebody told me, what Face actually told me, he was like, yo, I want you to meet my man Pop. I didn't know what our encounter was going to entail. So I went and did my research. And the first thing that came up about you was 211. So what exactly is that, bro? And what is the mission statement with them?
211 was founded by Councilman Kelly in 2010. And it was his way of coming back home to support by creating after school programs and different installments to be able to help kids by using art, music, and really allowing kids to have different spaces for them to be creative. So I've known Du and my brother went to Shaw University together. I've been knowing Du since I was 13. One of my very first speeches, or one of my very first audiences that I had spoken in front of, he was actually there, and we hadn't seen each other in years. So after that, we kind of like, we chopped it up or whatever, and we've been together ever since. That was 2013.
Now, I'm going to just go out on a limb and assume this, but when I hear Do, is that Do It All Do?
Yeah, Do It All Do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I've seen his name also like popping up everywhere. And like even when I spoke to the young brother Sequane, like Dude's name popped up. And I was just like, I follow him, but I've never like understood what's going on. And then at the 420 event and how I heard everybody not necessarily singing his praises, but highlighting his community works.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. Now I was starting to put two and two together with what you're currently doing, and it just made all the sense.
Bro gave me keys to figure it out, right? So we have different areas of the city, and the one thing that was different for him, because he was from the West Ward, I was allowed to work in every ward, right? Which is a little bit different sometimes when council people or people have aspirations, they'll only work in one place.
Right.
I learned a lot about bro, like especially during COVID. A lot of phone calls came. He could have taken, payments, or he could have done a lot of things, and I watched him protect the city. And he was like, I have to live with whatever decision I make, right? So one of the things, that I love, or one of those things that's credited to our names, is in the middle of COVID, we dropped 70,000 pounds of food in the middle of the city.
That's amazing.
It was Councilman, myself, BBS Boys, Redman, of course, Reggie, and a few other brothers, right? And we worked with Roger Leone and Dr. Maria Ortiz. We couldn't use the school, but they gave us everything else. So then we reached out to some of the bros, and we couldn't put it in one particular project or a different place because there was a lot going on. So we had to tractor trailers, drop it right in the middle of and then we was able to feed about 5,000 families that day.
That's beautiful, man. So let me ask you this: what brought you to this? I don't want to call it a pilgrimage, but uh, effectively your mission. What? How did you land in this, bro?
The pains of life. Um, I grew up in Seth Borden in the 80s and the 90s. You know, um, we didn't have a lot of tools. We didn't have a lot of resources. For a lot of my guys and a lot of the people that I know, no matter how it turned out, a lot of them just was trying to provide for their families, right? So there wasn't a lot of help that came that way. There wasn't a lot of those things, and so growing up in that environment, you watch a lot of death, you watch a lot of despair, and there's nothing really you can do. So when I got to uh, my adult age, I always said that I wanted to become the person I needed when I was younger for someone else.
That's right.
So when the opportunity presented itself for me to work with Do, I always felt like that was my way of righting some of the wrongs, right? And making sure that I was a beacon of light. So for a lot of the bros around the way and for a lot of people, man, my phone ring all the time. And sometimes I keep it that way because no one, when we down to our last or we don't know, the last thing is we kind of really don't want nobody to know we don't know,
That
right?
part.
So I've always put myself in a situation where the guys know I'm a hold whatever they tell me in secrecy, right? Whether it's expungement, whether they're on the run, whether they need to turn themselves in, whether they're trying to get a job, whether they got a domestic violence case, whatever it is that they need from me in order for me to support them, whether it's for Christmas, right? I've had guys call me, you know, the night before and be like, yo, bro, you know, I'm down bad. What am I going to do? And I'm like, pull up to my crib and I'll open my garage and I'm like, yo, there's toys there, or they need stuff for back to school, or sometimes they need help trying to navigate the beef between them and their kid's mom, right? To be able to have their kids in their lives. So ultimately, my thought was to be a safe person in a safe space to be able to support my community without judgment.
That's amazing, bro. When I hear you say Seth Boyden, bro, I've driven past Seth Boyden. Obviously, when Seth Boyden was closed, because I was too young to be driving at that time. But like, my godmother's from Seth Boyden, and the stories that I've heard about that place, or even just like the air about it when you drive past, man, it. I come from Paterson, New Jersey. Like, there's so many similarities to like
Right.
the places that we've grown up, bro. Like, did any of like the OGs in the neighborhood even attempt to like be somewhat that to
Yeah, you have it, but they can only give you what they got,
that part?
right? Um, it's hard. You have a lot of people who will, even though they down bad, right? They're drug addicts. They're, you know what I mean. Their addictions, their pains, their troubles put them in certain position when it comes to vices and what have you. But they try to give you the best part of them.
Right,
But there's a ceiling to that because if they haven't learned, right, or if they haven't grown through their pains, it's hard for them to give you the right information. So there's a ceiling to it, right? I always say, I love my dad, but he can only give me the murder game and wet and dry weight,
right,
right?
right,
He, my mother was able to love my dad through some stuff,
right.
right? She loved him through addiction. She loved him through all of these things where you seen his growth and development directly tied to her love, right?
Right.
But when it came to instruction, he had a lot of information. But I always tell people it was a lot of information, but no wisdom. And that's the time that we live in now where it's so much information, but no wisdom,
No, that's accurate, bro.
right? Everyone can tell you what someone told them, right? But wisdom is, information applied that renders a result both good, bad, or indifference that allows you to have wisdom, right? Where we live in a day and age where everyone is just giving away information, right? They're regurgitating what they've heard, what someone's told them. And so when you get to the root of a problem and you ask them for direction, they put their hands up. Oh man, I don't know what to tell you, bruh.
That's
Go
right.
get you a lawyer,
That's
right?
right.
So, but going back to around the way, they loved us, right? OGs loved us. They cared for us, but they only can give us what they had.
No, that's a fact. That's a fact. So, a question that I ask basically every walk in life that I encounter that is willing to sit down with me or have conversation with me for the sake of not only just myself getting to know you further than our relationship has already
Right.
blossomed, but for people who are interested to know more about you, if someone were to ask, especially like now, who are you? What would your answer be to them? Who is Pop?
I'm everything that's right and wrong with the city of Newark. Operated in the world of doing as the Romans did till I realized I wasn't in Rome, nor was I a Roman. But that came from the ability to know that there was more to life, right? We grow up in this space that life is different. So our parents protected us from the dangers, but allowed for us to experience the growing pains, right? Because that's where the information was, right?
Right,
Running in the walls, right? Now you get to think. So I grew up in a certain setting. By me knowing that I wanted more, I ran into some gentlemen that changed my life. One of them was Dupre Kelly. The other one is Juan Rivera. Another one that knew my brother. So
right,
because most of the close ties to my brother, Juan Rivera is now the county register of Essex County. That's like in a point of life of saving. I contribute the part of my life that was saved to my direct relationship to him. Because when you are at that road, that crossroad of what was or what could be, you really need someone in your corner
that's
because it's lonely.
it
There's a
is.
lot of there's a lot of unease there, right? And so my process of that was, he was like, you know, you my guy, but you going out is either you messing with what I'm messing with or you down the projects. It's one of the
Right,
two.
right,
And my love for the relationship that I had with him made me want to change, right? And so he was like, I got you. So we weren't used to that, right? I'm not used to that, right? I'm not used to somebody actually being like, yo, I got you and their word matters, right? So he
that's a fact.
he kind of just did it. He just, I moved closer to him. I moved around the corner from him. He lived on one block. I lived the block over. We stayed tied to the hip, and he presented opportunities for me, but I had to do the work. You feel what I'm saying? So I went back to school, um, William Patterson, NJIT, did all of these different things. Um, wound up becoming an Essex County committee member. I won an election some years ago, and then that was like the part of me tying into me. The part of me was um, that's where I found it. Right? Was he used to always say, "You don't owe me anything, pay it forward."
Right,
And then he used to always say, we live in a world where we are hell bent with getting even with people who wronged us. But what about being hell bent on getting even with the people that do right by you?
that part.
So that was my thought. So my thought was, now I become hell bent on getting even with those that did right by me. So that became the part of that was, you do right by me, I'm gonna pay it forward. I'm gonna look out for somebody else. And then now it becomes a contagion because I'm saying to you, The same opportunity afforded to you, afforded to somebody else. So then I started looking at this body of work that I began to create, and everything was kind of coming back to me where it was directly contributed to me looking out for someone else, and they began looking out for someone else. And so that was when it was like, you've actually done good here, right? So
What do you think is the largest disconnect right now with like this city? Because I hear people talking about the old Newark, and I hear mixed reviews. Now, me not originally being from Essex County, like I don't really have a dog in this fight. So depending on where I am, I hear different opinions about different people affecting the city, from Sharp James to Ras Baraka. I just found out that Broad Street is actually Ken Gibson.
Kim Gibson Boulevard.
I, I had no idea. And then I went and looked up information about
Mm-hmm.
that too. Do you see any difference in Newark as it once was, or from what you saw growing up to now?
Oh yeah, there's light years different. Um, I think what happens is people fail to realize the good old days is in front of them, not behind
Mm,
them. And we, when you're facing this way, right? He says depression is thinking too far behind, anxiety is looking too far ahead, right? And so we live in a depressed state because you have people who are looking too far behind and not recognizing that we have to look at change and understand change, and we have to take change in. When you look at certain things and you look at, gentrification, or you're looking at these other things, right? I always keep it on I. What have I done to support the things that I'm complaining about,
right.
right? Because it's singular, because it takes a bunch of singulars to be a completion. 371,000 people in this city
Mm,
plus, right? If you look at it, we got 38,000 plus students. Less than 4,000 voted in the last school board election, which represents the ability to pick and choose who make the decisions on behalf of your children. So if you tell me that you love your children, I say no. Why? I didn't see you vote for who represents your children, right? So when I look at it, I'm saying, okay, why do our schools suffer? Why does the sports suffer? When was the last time I went to go to my alma mater and support the basketball or football, right?
right.
When was the last time that you actually went downtown and purchased or supported the neighborhood store, right? And then you wonder why the corridors are bleak. And then you wonder why other things are coming in, because we find ourselves in these situations where the I in us turns into someone else's problem, right? So if you deal with the I, you deal with the you, and you say, okay, I'm going to support. I will, I'm going to clean up in front of my house, right? I'm going to support the local food drive. I'm going to support the local nonprofit, right? I'm going to support the local store. Then what happens is you will see the beautification without gentrification.
I just want to address something and just make sure I understood it correctly. You said depression is looking too far behind you, but anxiety is looking
You're
too
too far
far
ahead.
ahead.
Hmm.
That's deep, bro. That's deep,
Because everything is today. Everything is today,
right?
right?
That's right.
The focus is being better at every aspect of your life today, right? Birth is one day, life is one day, death is one day, right? If you wake up every morning and say, I'm going to be the best father, son, lover, parent, community member that I can be today, life becomes so much easier, right?
That's accurate.
Because it allows for you to stay present. a lot of times we are in spaces, but we're not present, right? It happens at work, happens
Yeah.
in relationships, it happens at home, right? You sitting there staring off at the TV, but you're looking behind your eyes. You're there, but you're not present,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so we fail to realize is if we could be the best of us today, just today, and then rinse and repeat, right? Because what happens is there's there's three viable options in life:
Mm-hmm.
the things you love, the things you hate, and the indifference. Indifference is just things you have to do. If most of the things wound up in that third category, your life becomes so much simpler, right? Because if you do not attach an emotion to doing dishes, if you don't attach an emotion to sweeping the floor or doing laundry, and it's something that you simply have to get up and do, you have more energy to exist when it comes to the things that matter: life,
True.
love, children, right? Instead of applying this energy of love and hate to every secular part of your life, right? And then it doesn't force you to compartmentalize. You live in a space that says indifference.
One of my issues has always been, now that I can be a provider for my family, for my wife, for my children, that's all I can focus on now. Like, and I can't rest until I'm in a space of where I'm just like comfortable, bro, and I'm not worried about necessarily being a couple paychecks away from oh shit. You know what I mean? Like, it's an uncomfortable feeling, bro. Like, and I actually did an episode with some of my brothers before about the importance of learning to relax. Like, I just went on vacation and it still didn't feel like vacation. Not because I necessarily had anything to worry about in terms of bills, but because I'm a father and a husband, and we're in a foreign country, I'm on century mode, but I'm still thinking about the financials too, bro. And until I got 100 put up, until like, in addition to having 100 put up, I got like 400 somewhere else. You know what I mean? Like, that's when I may be able to sleep properly. It's disturbing, and I've been like battling with myself too because I was there for like 5 days and I didn't have one good night of sleep. Primarily because I wasn't sleeping in my own bed, but more so
Life.
life was on my mind, bro. And I'm like, how do you escape that?
So everything comes with a target, right? I don't believe in goals, right? It's objectives. But then you have to know the facts. If you have $5,000 in the bank, you have more put away than half of the country,
Right.
right? Which is an actual fact, right? So the truest reality of life is, um, I remember that um, when I started a business, me and my ex, and she was like one of the dopest partners to have, right? And we had this little thing that we would go through, and the fact was, we didn't celebrate unless we won, right? So we created this thing that when we had the business, it was like, okay, we had levels of celebration. And whether it was a bottle of wine, I got a cigar, whether we went out for the night, whether, we took a long vacation, it was based on the contracts that we had and all of these different things. When we look at life, sometimes the answer is really right in front of you, especially financially, right? You can say to yourself, if you could invest, let's say for instance, realistically, if you invested $1,000, doubling your money in a year would be more than suffice, correct?
Right. Right.
So let's just say if you did that, if you doubled your money, $1,000, and you doubled it, you're 9 doubles away from $1 million, correct? You're 9 doubles away from $1 million. 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, right? You're 9 doubles away from $1 million.
Right.
So in 10 years, you can have $1 million. Question is how you get there, right? So information change situations. So here's the thing. Most people don't know their impact of their household. So no one really taught you money, right? So here's the first thought, and I'm going to send it to you. So you write down all your bills, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you create itemized line based on the life you want to have, right? I don't care what kind of vehicles it is, G5 wagons, whatever, right? How many vacations you want to go on? Where do you want to go? Investing money into your family, right? So you're going to do that, and you're going to divide that number over the course of a year, and you'll divide it by 12, right? If you take your job, your income from your employer, 9 times out of 10, you're going to still be in the red. This is where it goes. This is the vehicle you're looking for, because at best, here's what I try to tell people. If you can find something you love to do to be able to circumvent your income, where you can now spend your hard-earned money on the things you want versus the things you need, because like I said, if you got $5,000, half of America lives at or below check to check.
Right.
Right? In Newark, 29.8% of our population live at or below poverty. The average income in Newark, New Jersey is $29,000 and some odd dollars. Right?
It's not even enough to live.
Right. So when you look at it, a secondary or residual income is absolutely necessary. The problem that most people um, believe, and it's actually is false. Your employer is not entitled to supplying you the funds for your lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
They pay you what they believe the value of your position is. Right?
That's real. That's real.
Not your lifestyle.
That's real.
So the faster you understand that your employer is not responsible for your lifestyle, the faster you'll start making better decisions.
That's right.
Right? Because now it's the investment into yourself. Right? How do I turn $200 into something? Right? How do I take that recipe from my grandma's favorite banana bread and turn that into something? Right? How do I turn this skill set or this thing that I have that I love into a conduit or a vehicle for me to be able to make money? You only have to make $233 a day in order to make $100,000. That's all you need.
That's a fact.
That's all you need. You need nothing else. Right? So if you stole a $23 item 10 times a day, or you became a weekend warrior and divide that by Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, right? Life becomes a little bit different, because especially in a case like yours is where the bills is not your emotions, and your daily deeds is not directly associated to whether you can pay your bills or not. Right? Because especially for men, right? We're providers, we're protectors. The worst thing in the world for a man is to come home and have more bills than money.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because it creates something in the household, right? Because you are that primary source, right? And so when you the CEO, right? CEO has to provide in order to be able to give the manager what they need in order to make sure that, you know what I mean, that the plant runs smoothly.
No, that's facts. That's facts. That's fact. You have this bevy of information and knowledge with you, bro. My question to you is, if you ran into your younger self, and I know somebody might see this and be like, damn, well, he asked somebody else that question. But I think for men, especially men that have gone through the things that we've gone through, bro, like what would you say to your younger self, bro? Not necessarily as advice or
Little
to
bro,
sit here, youngin, but what
little,
would you say
little,
if you
little.
bumped into
I'm
youngin?
I'm saying this to my younger self and any young man or young woman that's out there. They're gonna judge you anyway. So do it. Walk with fire. Don't waste your grind or your greatness. What happens is, right? Um, I read a lot. My parents was very. My mom used to always say, "A formal education to make you a living, self-education to make you wealthy." So I read a lot. I still read a lot, right? I can do, you know, when I'm on my A game, I could do 8 to 10 books a month, and I could do
Sheesh.
both. I could do both Audible and books, like on my desk right now. And I think, believe it or not, so I have this weird little thing that I always tell people, right? If you can get past chapter 3 and you can, and it doesn't motivate you to do it, they throw that book in the trash.
That's real.
Absolutely.
My problem with books is that I started with very few and I started, reading them and finishing them. But now that I've amassed more, I'm starting to read some and then I'll get another book and I'll start reading
Yeah,
that and then I get
yeah,
another book and
yeah.
start reading that. And now I got a bunch of books that I haven't
It's cool.
finished.
I got like 6 books on my desk at work that I'm reading all at the same time. It's fine because here's what the thing is: information. The problem is it shouldn't be just information. If
Mm,
if you're taking in information and you're not applying it, what is it for,
that's real.
right? Me, I like the fact that I get to tell people that I've done some stuff, right? It's for you to apply. And the methods and the things that I'm telling you is things that I've applied, right? Have I hit the non-doubles? Nah. But it's okay to know that I made a residual income of 40 grand in a year from doing nothing,
Right.
right? It's okay to be able to say, oh man, you know what, I made 18 grand last month, right? From me just using who and what I am,
Right.
right? I create businesses and I create structures for people. One of the things that I realize is that if you go on one of these places online, or one of these services, they'll charge you 1600 $1700 for something that'll cost you 200 bucks, but it comes with nothing else, right? It doesn't come with instructions. It doesn't help you with mindset. It doesn't do these things. So when I bring in clients, the reality is I'm not just going to drop you off. I'm not just
Right.
going to do the paperwork. I'm not just going to drop you off. I'm going to help you build the structure. I'm going to help you look at the things that need to be done. I'm going to help you uh, write for funding, how to talk to the bank, because everything is a language. And the reason why I know is because I've I failed a whole lot, and that's where the information is.
Right.
And because I've gotten beat up in the midst of it, it's made me better at it. So now I know, like, okay, we've had 8 9 businesses, right? 3 absolute failures, right? Never did anything. But the greatest thing that we had was we always believed in steps of investment. Very low investment, high yield return, right? Where we're like, okay, it's easier for us. If you can't make it with $1,000, why would you go to the bank for $10,000,
That's real.
right? So
That's real.
that's where most of my clients love me, right? Is the fact that when I'm like, all right, how much money do you have? I got 30 grand. What do you want to do? I want to do chicken and waffles. Okay. The state of New Jersey allowed for you to do a cottage. Make $20,000 selling chicken and waffles out your house. If you can't do that, there is no way we can create the infrastructure for you to be successful at a brick and mortar, right? So most of the things that I tell people to do is invest a portion of what you believe the totality is and work your way up to it. Because guess what? You're gonna work out all the kinks on the bottom side,
Right.
right? Or you're gonna get punched in the mouth where you go, I don't think I want to do this.
Hmm.
Because that's really when when I talk to my clients, the first thing I say is, I'm preparing you to get punched in the mouth. And when you get punched in the mouth, it's gonna render a result, because you're either gonna say, I'm in the fight, or you're gonna say, sell everything and I'm going back to my job.
Right. So speaking of the kinks, how does being a businessman, being a parent, how does that balance work for you, bro?
There's no such thing as balance. It's unfair.
Okay.
It's uneven. You just got to know how to slide the balance, right? You have to be able to. I always tell my kids, right? I won't be there for everything, but I'll be there for the most important things, right? And so the advantage of that conversation says, some days I'm gonna come in tired, right? I'm gonna hug you.
Hmm.
I'm gonna show you some love, and I'm going to bed, and
Right.
I'm going back out to the war. But if you gotta, I'm not going to basketball practice, but I'll be there for the basketball game.
Right.
I won't be there to watch you. You know what I mean? But the spelling bee come up, I'm near, right?
Right.
The unfair balance of that, even in relationships, you have to be able to do that, is because my responsibility to be able to afford you the quality of life that you deserve doesn't come with a balance, because I can't be here taking up this much space when this requires a certain amount of space. But
Right.
I will intentionally create a space that you know that you're loved. Anyone that's saying that they want a balance between, it doesn't work. It's a figment of your imagination. And what you're doing is you're about to create a, a situation that you're going to become an absolute failure,
Right.
right? Because something is going to drastically is going to drastically shrink because of this want for this fair balance.
That's real. That's real. And please don't take me not looking at
No,
you
no, I
as
got
me
you.
not ignoring you.
I
Sometimes
got
when I
you.
look off this
I
way or
got you.
look off and I hear better.
Yeah, I
You know
got
what
you.
I mean?
I
And I'm
got you.
visualizing what you're saying.
Yeah.
So the slight traversal to, other endeavors that you had, man. First time I met you was at HASHTORIA.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that, man. What did I'm not gonna ask you what you do, because what you do doesn't matter. Like when people hear HASHTORIA, like it's almost impossible for you not to be associated with that. So what does HASHTORIA mean to you, and like its symbol for the community and what it's doing for the community, man?
HASHTORIA is home for me. It's funny because I was saying to somebody, I'm the famous nobody, right? But everybody should have me in their phone.
Right.
So I've known Ray for some time. When Ray first came and we had a and one tournament some years ago, Ray was here and performed in front of City Hall. We always kept in contact. And then so when HASHTORIA came about, there was some issues or whatever, and his team reached out to me and said, "Yo, we want to sit down." And so I was like, "All right." And so I was tapped to create the community stuff, the community engagement. They thought it would be best that I was, I made the connections. I brought the people in. HASHTORIA is way bigger than flower, right? It's a space, it's a
Right.
community, it's a solution, right? You guys know, not having the space, you can go in and record. DJs can set up DJ equipment and just start playing music. There's an open door policy if you want to put on a flea market on a Saturday. It's literally just call me and we do what we do. And that was the part that Ray, Jed, Josh, and Charlemagne was very, very, very intentional on, was the fact that this wasn't just a mom and pop spot for you to come into and, for you to be able to purchase your experience, right?
Right.
It was meant for you to be able to sit down almost and to feel like Cheers when Norm walked in the door, like, hey, Norm.
Right.
They want you to be able to walk in and everybody know who you are. You have access to the space. It's very Instagrammable. It has, all this, legacy and all of these things, which is, Raekwon and Wu-Tang as a whole. So yeah, we've been doing great, man. The one thing that I say it is I wish we had more support, the financial support side, because again, what happens is, spaces like these, they need the support, right? It takes a long time to build it out. There's a financial structure side of it. So, for me, stop past HASHTORIA, 799 Broad Street, buy something, make some videos, stop in, support us, because the last thing that, we want is to lose another great space and then everybody wonder what happened.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I'm gonna be real with you. What drew me to HASHTORIA, because to be completely honest, bro, while I don't knock the business aspect of dispensaries,
Right.
I kind of like have a bias because of, the negative consequences
Right.
of the black market, so to speak, and all of the beloveds that's sitting in
Right.
because of the flower. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? But when I saw what HASHTORIA was about, and I saw like all of the community events and the women's events, and I was just like, okay. At first, I thought it was a play on the community, but then I saw how tapped in like y'all really are, and then when I got the chance to meet Ray, and then I met Ghost, and then I saw like there were people from the city that they already knew, and they were like really embracing of them. I was just like, yo, damn. I was like, wow. And for it to be what it is now, like I have such high hopes for HASHTORIA, man. Like, and for any of you who may be one, I don't have an invested interest in it. I am just a firm proponent for anything that is serving as an instrument in the community to change the way we just do business. You know what I mean? Like, it trips me out that black people are now in spaces now where we could sit and talk about weed and be around weed and have weed in our pockets and shit. And I think the only obstacle right now for us is tapping in and learning how to generate more revenue amongst our community. Not excluding anybody else, but we just need to understand the organization from seed to dollar.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I'm just
And
thankful
and
to
there's
even be a part of that.
and there's a bunch of other stuff, and that's the stuff we're working on, right? Is to be able to teach people black labeling, right? How to be able to invest in this $1 billion industry, right? And where this industry on the other side of it was very detrimental to our people, right? Because of the drug laws and things of that nature. Now we have an open opportunity, and that's what I love about Ray and the team, is the fact that they are willing to do that part, right? Educate people, bring in the other thing, and bring in the other things and the other opportunities, so that and and also who they work with, right? They work with other black owners, right? They work with black and brown owners throughout the state of New Jersey, and they're trying to create those things, right? And same thing, you've seen it. Respect the Mike was there, right? Up and coming hip hop artists, where they really sat in and tapped in with the young artists and talked to them. You know what that is for, a young kid to his first time performing, trying to get on the stage, and you have Ghost and Ray, giving you insight, right, on something that they've done that's part of their legacy. So that's it in a nutshell, right? Working with Uncle Willie's, right?
Right.
Having you guys there, right? Having us there, having you there, having all of these, the tables with people being able to start their businesses and all of that. That's it, right? It's community, right? It's everything plus the flower, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That's HASHTORIA, right? When you see HASHTORIA, like when you see it, you like, I'm just about to grab a coffee on my computer and go sit in HASHTORIA, right? That's what it was meant for, right? And so our next phase is trying to process how to create the consumption lounge, right? And then partner with, stores like Uncle Willie and other establishments where you can do everything there. You can work on something, you can watch performances, you can order food, you can consume, you can do everything right there and just be home. But HASHTORIA is definitely my baby.
That's actually what was the question I was going to ask is what were your plans for the future? But more importantly, how has the community responded to HASHTORIA?
Um, it's it's good and bad, right? Because again, when we look at the world, our people wasn't really educated on dispensary, right? Some people still have a hard time paying taxes on marijuana, right?
I'm not gonna lie.
No, bro. Listen,
I'm
it's one of them.
spoiled, bro.
Yeah, it's
Like,
one of them things. So, and then the reality of life is, that's what it comes to, right? It's the educational side. When you look at it, regardless, right? It's not about scaring anyone. It's about really knowing the facts, right? A lot of us, marijuana is part. If you are in your 40s or right, it's part of the therapeutic community that we didn't have access to,
that's right.
right?
That's right.
So we didn't have therapists. We didn't have these things. So our coping mechanism was marijuana,
That's
right? And so for us, we educate, we assess, and we help you with what may be the underlying needs, right? So like I have someone that texts me, she's dealing with certain things, she has issues with a menstrual and how it's debilitating. And so, I got her a tincture or something that she puts in her belly button that gives her direct, so there, for most people who purchase their flower, legacy side, right? I still have friends who's on the legacy side. They still come in. All I say is, just come and support. One of them apes or one of them zips, man. Just come support. That's
Yo,
all it
first
is.
of all, the legacy side is such a player way to describe the beloveds, bro. Like,
Yeah,
yo, that's
that's the
smooth.
legacy side.
That's
Yeah.
smooth, bro. I'm not mad at it at all. Um, I've really, to your point, I like I said, I'm a bit tainted when it comes to paying the tax. But now, as a business owner, understanding what the tax does, to your point, if all of us come in and support and buy an eighth at least once a month, if at minimum, because you're spending more at the dispensary buying a zip.
Right.
You know what I mean? Um, to know that the community is you're receiving mixed reviews is not surprising because again I was on both sides of the fence.
Mm-hmm.
From a business standpoint, I was like, damn, I'm mad because I can't get my license and things like that. What would your suggestion be to anybody who is looking to get into the cannabis industry and not necessarily from a dispensary standpoint, but if they were interested in that aspect, what would be your course of action that you would suggest to them? And I'm still listening to you. Just
There's a bunch of ways to get in the game, right? In order to get in the game from the flower side, it takes a lot of money, right? A lot of partnerships, a lot of investments, a lot of investors because those fees. But guess what? Like I tell everybody, if you look at a vehicle, right? The people who put the bolts on a Rolls Royce make just as much money, right? The leather straps count, the steering wheel counts. There's all these ancillary businesses in and around the cannabis business that will allow for you to be able to get in the game to and then work your way up, right?
right.
When you look at it, it's a tall tale. The worst thing is being the first, especially in this game, right? Because the realities of it is the municipalities and the state don't really have it all together, right? So the the owner who's trying to create a dispensary is the collateral damage in the middle, right? Because if the city's trying to work something out and the state's trying to work something out, you're caught in the middle, and then there goes time,
Right. Right.
which means money, which means you're paying for the building, you're paying for the investment, you're paying for the wiring, you're paying for this, you're paying for that, and the clock is just running.
Right.
right? On average, depends on who you are. It could be 2.5 to 4 year average before you even open your cut your doors, because there's all of these other things that's going on. And I hope that the state of New Jersey and whatever y'all get it together, right? So is one band, one sound that will allow for our people who comes in with a dream with very little money, where they're not pushed out, right?
Right.
Or forced to bring on predatory lenders and bring on predatory investors and things of that won't allow for them to sustain because of just the time, right? The average build of a house is 8 months,
Right.
right?
That is
There
correct.
shouldn't be, a 2 year, 3 year thing.
That is correct.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we've covered so much during this conversation, man. Um, what are your hopes for the city? What are you expecting to see, considering that just like every other major urban area across the country is falling victim to gentrification, uh, individuals not even being able to find adequate employment, so to speak, with the upcoming arrival of Lionsgate and things like that. What are your anticipations for the city, man, and for the residents of Newark and the surrounding areas of Newark?
Um, Sustain most, elevate, sustain some, elevate most, empower all.
Mm,
You know, the reality is some people, they are where they are, right? And then you have to elevate those that have to be able to find the employment or find the education that will allow for them to be able to compete for space here, right? And not just it, which leads to empowerment of everyone. I believe that we have nothing is perfect, right? Everything is about progress. We have some great council people. We have some great nonprofits. We have um, people at the assembly and our senators, Ruiz, and on the state side, Cory Booker and Assemblywoman Ileana Pintor and Shanique Spade and all of our council people, from President Crump to Aníbal Ramos, and we have these great people who are doing the best they can and fighting the ills that come down the pipe.
yeah,
So one of the greatest things I always say is become the change you wish to see. Um, you know, be willing to uh, be willing to choose comfortable shoes over a comfortable seat.
damn. That's a bar. That's a bar, bro. That's crazy.
All
You can
right.
say that again.
Be willing to choose comfortable shoes over a comfortable seat. We all can find flaws in everything, ourselves, others, right? The greatest thing a person has is the ability to be able to apply solution, right? If you apply solution to your house, right, it'll affect your street. If it affects your street, it'll affect the block. If it affects the block, it'll affect the school, right? And so on and so forth. If you become the thing you wish to see and you embody that and you live that, remember, just for today,
Yeah.
everything changes. Because what happens is people watch you be. Even with me in a nonprofit, it's funny because um, when I first started, um, it was crickets, right? People just watched.
Hmm.
Some years later, I get texts, phone calls, all of this. I have people say, I had a organization reach out to me and said, you know, we heard you're the person to trust. Never knew me anything. Said, we want to take care of a school for the prom. And I did the legwork. and I called the school and I reached out to them and I said, hey, I have someone that want to, donate some, cater to some kids, want to do some stuff, haircuts, yada yada yada, and we made it happen, right? I have people who call me and say, all of these things, and people reach out to me, and for me, that's one of the greatest things because I used to be known for something else, right? So, and so for people to know me for goodwill, and people to know me for my community, and for me loving on my people and me doing these things, it that matters because between me and you, my parents never seen me do good. My parents passed away, you know what I mean? Like I was on a high risk warrant when I buried my mother. I literally was. Um so a lot of the things that I do is it's regret, is gift wrapped with some regret, right? And not to say that many of night I've been hero to others, but I've been the villain in my own household,
That's usually
right?
how I go, bro.
I've been there, right? And as much as I've done good, right? I've destroyed some I've destroyed some stuff at the same time.
Right.
Like I didn't, you know what I mean? Like I'm that. So it's the that unfair balance where it slides. The sliding is a sliding scale, right?
Right.
You do well in some places, you neglect some places. You just hope at the end of it, you've made your people proud and you've left room for others to lead with grace and empathy, right? Because we're not perfect.
That's a fact, man. That's a fact. So the funny thing is like earlier today, I went for my interview for Global Entry.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because I clearly haven't traveled enough. And when I walk in there, it's a brother that's the officer that's like in charge of like bringing people through, and like I had to leave and came back because I forgot my passport, whatever the case may be. But I come back in there, he tells me to go sit behind the desk, and I sit there, and he's pulling up my record, and I bring my expungement paperwork too, and show him the shit, and he's like, "You've been busy, huh?" He was like, "Yo, let me just tell you something. Leave the weed alone, bro." He was like, "I don't know." He was like, "It's inhibiting your life, and you know what I'm saying, and just all this shit." And I'm just listening to him. He's like, "Yo, you could be doing so much more with your life." I'm like, I kind of am doing something with myself right now. Like, I'm smoking to keep from crashing out, honestly. Like, and he's like, "Yo, I don't smoke, I don't drink, and all of this shit." And I'm just like, "Bro, that works for you." But doubling back to those coping mechanisms, bro, like you can't necessarily tell somebody how to deal with whatever it is that they're going through. Like, I don't like popping pills. So for me to deal with, that's how it started with me with weed. Well, no, let me not lie. I started smoking weed from a young man, and then when I got older, I was like, yo, I'll be experiencing like arthritis and shit. So it was a coping mechanism, but it was also therapeutic. What do you say to somebody that may be feeling like they may be in a space that they may be abusing, or this may be something that may take precedence in their life?
We don't shame people out of trying to find the right ingredients to create a straight roadmap for their life, right? So I can tell you, oh, guess what? I don't drink and smoke, and you could be a horrible human being, right?
Right,
I think, right, to that effect, a lot of us are shooting through life from the hip because you got to remember that we're two generations removed from no information, no support, no anything, right? So what our parents gave us, it it's it's outdated,
right,
right?
right,
So here's the issue that we have when it comes to stuff like that is a lot of times we don't identify in order to rectify, because where the information came from, the person is no longer with us.
Right.
Right?
That's right.
We don't change grandma recipes no matter how much it'll kill us. Right?
No matter how much salt.
Right?
content
Because,
you add
right,
in.
we no longer cook with Lowry's, bro.
Right.
Right? I get it, I'm not saying that, but we no longer cook with these ingredients. So what happens is, right, when we was looking for ingredients, right, we didn't mess with nothing white because we watched what cocaine and heroin did, right, to our people. We was going through things, right, whether we was underloved, underserved, underprovided for, we was ugly, we was whatever the world decided to put on our shoulders. And the only coping mechanism we had was to be able to put that space between us and reality for just us to find peace.
That's right. That's right.
Right? Which is to be able to blow down, right? And so when you look at it, I don't tell people, oh, I don't smoke no more. I do it when I want, right?
That's right.
I operate in the space when I want. Chef has something come out. Like, I hang out with Redman. You can't tell me. That's my bro.
Right.
Like, you feel what I'm saying? Like, that's my guy. You can't.
I saw him do an interview where
Right.
he even spoke about how he stopped football and he was like celibate.
Yeah.
And how he invested
Skydiving.
in skydiving.
Yeah. Because we all have that moment, right? Everybody has that, they call it the road to Damascus, right? It's a split. And that's a lonely walk. You feel what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, as you become an adult and your kids outgrow your household. For me, that was, my babies left. My oldest, right? My oldest son, Dante, he, wound up having a kid. That was my best friend. You feel what I'm saying? And then my son Isaiah, my daughter Sierra, she now, she 20 something and she went to school and all of that. And, it's the, Papi, we love you, but, we live in life.
Right.
That's a part of life that you have to get. That's a jolt, because everything is invested in that, right? And if you're a good mother and father, you don't prepare for your life without your kids.
Right.
So when they begin to go this way, you're like this.
Yeah.
You feel what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's real. Because ideally, I would love to keep my babies, even in they grown at, like, in theory, right? I would love to have enough property that I can build like a guest house in the back.
You still ain't gonna see them.
That's cool. I know where you at.
Right.
Even if you,
wherever
you go on your vacations or whatever, I know in case of emergency, you at the back.
Oh yeah, I know where they at. It's, you know what it is? It's just that part, right? So that becomes another part of your life, right? Because you and the wife is like, you start at that point, right? You get to the point as a parent, you be like, back up off me a little bit, right. And then you be like, come hang out with me. And then when they get to that age where, like, 8, 9, they like, nah, back up off me. I know, don't kiss me in public. Don't do none of that. Drop me off at the corner. And so you're going to go through that. And I giggle because me and my son, like, we the DM kings, right? So we always send each other videos or whatever, and we hang out, beer, cigars, we like breweries or whatever the case, and you find that space. And the greatest part is, when you go through the phases of raising your kids, right? First phase is discipline. Mm-hmm. Then you become the educator. You become the coach. And then that last phase of life is when your kids become your friend.
Right.
And it kind of become cool because when you look at them and know you've raised decent human beings, right? I always tell myself, if all else fails, I just hope that I raise decent human beings.
That's a fact.
Right. Bro. And the fact that I was able, because I always tell my kids, right, we have enough shitty human beings with money, right? You can just be a decent human being. You can always figure out how to make money.
For sure.
Right? We can always figure out that part. and I'm thankful that my babies are adults, and they've come into their own. They've grown into their own. You know, and I'm proud of that. But this day and age, and like I said, this day and age is a little rough, especially dealing with parents. Certain types of conversations that you have to have. Our kids are. Some of our kids are in bad places. You know what I mean? And so you try to lend a hand where you can, but you know that there's an uphill battle in front of us when it comes to the teens of today.
Yeah. I, yeah. So my youngest baby, my oldest is 21. My youngest babies are 8, 5, and 2, bro. And that part that you're talking about where there's some days where you're like, yo, bro, I am way too tired for this. Like I literally have to stop myself in my tracks sometimes because I think about them days where instead of them wanting that hug from daddy, they gonna want to go hang with their friends or they gonna
Mm-hmm.
want to go outside and go do all of that. So I try to remain in a conscious space, bro, even when I'm tired, bro, to just at least give them 10 minutes. At least. Oh, it's easier said than done, but being a father has it has taught me so much about the world, but more so it taught me a lot about myself.
Right. But one thing about I learned is being a father, giving 100% where you stand is a win. And I always try to explain this, right? If you wake up in the morning and your gas tank, your personal gas tank, your emotional availability, um, you know, mental fortitude is at 40%.
Mm-hmm.
If you give that 40%, you gave 100%.
That's right.
And that's where I live, right? That's where we supposed to live. And I think that's the problem that we sometimes, I think that's where we sometimes forget is if you give what you got, you gave 100%, right? So sometimes today, you might only have a hug and a kiss. You gave 100%,
Right.
right? I used to do with my kids all the time, right? Some days I come in, man, I'm like this. Hey, y'all, I love y'all. I give them everything I had. And then some days I'm in the kitchen messing up their TikTok videos, but I'm in the mix. You get what I'm saying?
Right, right,
I'm
right,
out of step. I'm old. My back hurt. My knees hurt. But guess what? I
right,
gave you everything I had.
right.
So that's a part of that balance where I tell you about the unfair balance, but you show up. That's really it.
Right.
And sometimes we forget that going back today, I gave you everything I had today. It might not look like tomorrow, but I gave you everything I had today. Right? And
Mm,
as men, I think sometimes that's not applauded, right? We sometimes hear, you know, that's what you're supposed to do.
right.
Nah. Listen, service is service, right? And here's how I always think of it, right? When something go right, don't you still thank God?
That's right.
So
That's
being appreciative of an act of something that's part of my everyday, there's space for love there, right? Right?
yeah.
I'm, I'm not a robot. I need that love. I need that attention because believe it or not, when you are applauded and loved on by your family in a way, that's actually what re-energizes us, right?
That's right.
When we know that we were tired and we still made it happen, right? Or we knew there was a long road ahead, but we'll take on the overtime and we'll do the other things, right? And we'll make the sacrifices that are necessary. I don't really like to call them that sacrifice. We make the investments,
Right.
that are necessary,
That's right.
right? For our family to be safe and warm and accompanied, right? We still want that thanks, right? We appreciate you,
Right.
right? So
And not the
sometimes,
set of tools on Father's Day.
nah, nah, nah. You
Or the
better
grill.
not.
Then
You
we get a
better
grill for
not.
them.
You better not. I wish you would.
I ain't gonna lie though, babe. Listen, you give me that hibachi. You give me that hibachi Blackstone
You want that
joint.
Blackstone joint? You want that
I'm
black?
in
Yo, listen.
love,
One thing that
man.
I learned is when you get past a certain age, your wants become
Yo,
completely different. Like, bro, I got an Amazon cart full of shit that has nothing. Listen, I'm talking about little suction cup joints that make my life
yo,
easier.
bro.
It's the stuff
Magnets, man.
that.
I don't even have a need for super magnets right now.
Yo,
But guess who got them in the cart?
yo,
My
me,
whole focus
me,
is,
me,
and my friends like laugh at me. They
me,
like, yo, you don't never
bro.
want to go outside.
No.
I want to create a situation to where I can invite my peoples and we are all just comfortable, bro. And if that could be at my spot, bro, let that be,
Yo,
man.
we live for that. People fail to realize that when you become a certain age, like my dad used to say, you'll know when life is good when you stop running and you start walking through life just so that you can hear the birds chirp.
Yep.
And so like I've started young walking, right? I try not to miss nothing. I try to experience everything.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I truly try to experience is this age of like I really have a favorite eye on the stove.
Really? Which one is it?
It's the left one closest to this one in the front closest to this side.
Right,
I'm
right,
standing
right.
front. That left front one is my favorite, right?
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
crazy
That's right.
because it's funny because that eye, for some odd reason, it allowed for you to swing to the table over.
Yep.
It always seemed like the one on the right is closer to the garbage can.
It's
I
like the
don't know
driver's
why.
side door.
Yeah.
It's literally like the driver's
So
side door.
that's my joint, right? And so it's little stuff.
Right.
Wooden spoons. I got my favorite wooden spoon, my favorite knife, right? I got, my Ginsu and all of that. And, you know, my products, right? The Ninja products and the stuff that I got that toaster one. I got the regular toaster oven that you could touch and it comes down,
Oh,
and that you could put like
man.
tater tots and stuff in
Yo,
there.
bro, that's crazy.
And then having multiple gadgets. Like I
Yeah,
have multiple
gadgets is
gadgets
my
for
shit,
different
bro.
things. So like I barely use my microwave. So it's like I got the Emerald Gassi toaster oven, the 9-in-1
Yo,
joint
you
and
speak now. You
right.
speaking Swahili to me right
Right.
now. What
So
the hell is that?
Emerald Gassi came out with
Oh,
a
Emerald.
Emerald, yeah. Emerald Gassi. Yep.
EMRIL.
Emerald Gassi.
Okay.
Man, he has this. Man, that thing is amazing, bro. It had double doors, rotisserie. You put a whole chicken in there, the whole joint. I got that. Panini makers. Like, I don't make a regular sandwich no more, right? I make a grilled cheese. It's bougie,
Yo,
right?
bro, I'm not mad at it, bro.
And so it's one of them things that I giggle about because we grew up with that one frying pan. That one frying pan was everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just transferred grease. You
That's
had the
right.
little
That's
Crisco
right.
joints on the back of the
That's
stove.
right.
You
That
had
shit
the
was
bacon
salty,
joint.
man. It
You
was
had
a
the bacon
frying
joint
pan.
and the fish joint,
You
the
would
fish
put that shit
can.
in the oven if you needed to bake some. Yo, bro, that's so crazy.
And so now I buy gadgets to make my life experiences different, right? I feel like I'm at the financial status in my life that my grilled cheese does not supposed to come from a stove. It's supposed to come from a panini
You
maker.
look like you don't even use American cheese no more. Like you
Nah, I'm
completely
American
went
cheese.
Gouda.
No. I don't like stinky cheese. That we have that conversation all the time. I don't like stinky cheese. Like everybody has a different palate. I have a sweet palate. Like I'm the gummy bear guy. Like I'm that guy. Like I don't really sour creams and stuff is not really my thing. I'm more of a sweet palate guy.
It depends on the day of the week because I like gummy candy, but I prefer gummy candy over chocolate. But in terms of food, I'm definitely like a savory guy over a
Mm-hmm.
sweet. Like I
Yeah.
prefer like you told my niggas don't use Lowry's. Who?
So I teach you this. I tell you this crazy thing. I started. Well, my grandmother used to do that. We started mixing our own seasoning. So my grandmother used to always say, "Ain't none of y'all gonna die from a heart attack because of me."
Right.
right? So we would go and she would buy like garlic, so all these different things, and she would like mix them in a bowl and make like her own seasoning.
Okay.
So when you do that with Italians and all of these different ones, right? You make your own seasoning and you try to use the ones with less salt. It's just easier on everybody, and so we I've always done that. Don't get me wrong. If I'm doing bulk stuff, you buy the 40-pound box of quarter legs because you buy the barbecue. Lowry's go a long way. Look, you just pop the whole little white top ball, bah, and you
Not
get
even
busy.
paying
Bang,
attention,
bang,
bro.
bang, yep.
It's crazy.
You just start shaking that joint till you hear one of your ancestors. That's enough, baby.
Yeah, that's enough. That's enough. See, my guilty
That's it.
pleasure is like, especially on the grill. I will fuck some lamb chops up, bro. I will fuck some
Um,
lamb chops
I,
seasoned properly. It's over.
I've been known. I was having this conversation. I've been known. They say I got a childish palate because I order tomahawk steaks for my birthday, and all of them have to be well done. So I've been told
I ain't bloody, yo,
that
bro. For all of you who eat bloody meat, I don't judge y'all for nothing, but y'all some maniacs. And y'all borderline
serial
like
killers,
serial killers.
serial
Like
killer.
bloody meat, bro. Like you
Here's
cannot
my
ever say nothing about meat consumption. Ever. But
here
continue.
here's my thought. I'm not even trying to be funny. I just can't like you eating a pinky or something. Like I just can't get with and what I mean by well done is my thing is I just don't want to see no red. Like it could be light brown. It could be that I don't want no blood. If I squeeze this thing and anything come out, that meal is done for me.
That's where I might be childish because I prefer my shit a little charred. Like I like a good crisp on my hamburgers. Like
Right.
only time I'm eating
Yeah.
glizzies is if they like almost the color of like my. You know what I'm saying? Like they gotta be like that black, have that black markings of the grill.
Yeah.
It's the only way I'm really getting busy with it. Um, I think I do have a childish palate, but I don't really give a fuck.
Do you have as a foot, right? I always have to ask this question, right? Like do you have like those go-to things in your house and you hate it when somebody mess with it? Like you have like a go-to like certain types of chips? Do you have like that go-to thing? And
I
then all
used
of a
to have a
sudden,
hack,
right?
right? Mint, chocolate, whatever was my thing that I knew nobody else liked. Peppermint patties, Andy's candy, mint cookies, and cream ice cream. Having young children, though,
You're eating,
nothing is safe
yeah.
because what they like this week might totally change next month. And now it seems that all of Daddy snacks, the Malamars, all of that shit that I used to eat. Also, too, I'm gonna keep it real with you. I'm tired of niggas joking on me and talking about my dad bod, so I'm like always like stopping myself from eating shit that I want to eat. I'm a fat nigga on the inside, bro. Like when I say a fat nigga, I'm like 450 on the inside, bro. Because I
Mm,
enjoy food,
mm,
bro. Cheesesteaks, chicken, cheese, pizza.
mm.
Nigga, I will eat pizza all the fucking time. It's especially once I find like Tops Diner. Shout out to Tops. They ain't pay me to say that, but they will pay me. No, I'm just kidding. But shout out to Tops,
The
bro.
old tops, right?
Nah, the Tops Diner right now that I'm probably gonna make a reservation
Yeah,
for.
nah, that's cool. But my favorite go-to. So back in the day, I had an investment in a club, and we used to always go to um, Tops Diner
Mhm.
afterwards. And Tops Diner's lobster mac and cheese was probably, and I've traveled this country. I've traveled this country all over, and it was something about this Tops macaroni, this Tops lobster mac that was absolutely out of control.
It's still out of control.
Right, and so that was that thing. But my go-to is I will I will Hulkamania leg drop one of my kids about them Girl Scout cookies. Yo, listen, I will fight my children. I'm talking about fisticuffs. I'm talking about furniture moving. About my, about them Girl Scout cookies.
I thought I was safe, bro. Thin Mints have been
Yo,
the cookies that I've eaten for like the last 30 years.
I'm
My children, complete, complete
I
caught
cannot
around.
deny or confirm that I've put one of my kids in the headlock once or twice.
My
Over
baby
some
definitely giving
Samoan,
me a sign.
over some Samoan cookies.
You know what though? Like the fact that I can even share that with them,
Yeah.
I might say something. But the fact my babies like what I like, and I think that I'm a weirdo, I'm thankful, bro.
Weird.com is definitely me. Like I have my kids call me Google. That's first and foremost.
Right.
And then I am like the weird guy because like mostly everything I eat, like I can eat the same thing. Like I can go to the hot dog spot, I'm getting straight sweet onions and cheese. That's it. I ain't doing nothing else. I'm gonna do the same thing. Like I kind of like
If
routine.
it ain't broke, don't fix
Right,
it.
right. And people fail to realize, especially with like ladies, I'm gonna give you a tip on how to keep a man. Let him keep his routine. Make him a routine.
As long as it's not detrimental to
That's,
him or you.
no, what I mean by is right. If a woman creates a routine for her man that he loves, right? TV show, right? If you ever, that's like cheating, right? You watching the head of that show that you picked because that's his routine, right?
Right,
Because we don't really care for series, right?
right.
We don't really care for them. So if a man find a series that y'all kind of like or he love, don't watch another episode with him because he won't, he ain't messing with you no more.
Especially if it's not no shoot 'em up shit.
Right.
Like if it's something that y'all both can relate
If
to,
he
something
on
that
some
shows
if he
up
on
in your
some
life,
Grey's Anatomy shit, you better not
this is
skip it.
us,
Right.
shit like
You
that.
better not skip 2 episodes. Talk about you didn't jump ahead 2 episodes.
I'm absolutely a creature of habit. While I don't necessarily watch TV a lot, bro,
Me
I
neither.
agree with you. If it ain't broke, don't fix
Yeah.
it. Like I don't mind necessarily eating at the same spaces or eating the same place,
Yep.
especially if it's a good spot,
Yep.
bro. Like
The reason why we like routine is because we could put that energy into something else.
that part,
Right?
for sure.
I always say, right, I can eat the same thing, I can get up at the same time, I do the same thing. Because excuse me, I can focus my life on something else. Right? I can give that energy to what something I deem important.
Right.
Right? I'm not me going through my closet. If I swipe through my closet, I could probably wear, it's clean, but I'll probably wear the same 5 outfits, knowing I got a bunch of stuff going on down the side. Because
I'm
I'm
in a
like,
weird space with that too. Cause
yeah,
some days, right, if I don't have nothing to do, the dad in me takes over and it's the comfortable fits. But if I know like I'm about to meet with the beloved or something like that, like especially if I know like a week or a month in advance, I might not dedicate so much thought to it, but I'm thinking about it. Not
mm-hmm,
because I'm going to go try to impress anybody, but I'm a firm believer in that when you look good, you feel good. When you feel good, you do good type shit. You know what I mean? So
mm-hmm,
like I'm being about to be 42, bro. I'm in such a weird space, and I love it because I love the growth that I'm able to experience, and that I'm able to being able to see that person, being able to go to that funeral
mm-hmm,
of that old person,
mm-hmm.
bro. That shit was it was important. I find myself in spaces of feeling inadequate sometimes, though. Like not that I'm not exerting the most effort towards whatever I'm doing, but like secretly like doubting myself, like, are you good enough type shit.
You know what's the crazy part about that? I was just having a conversation that um the world of free ruined that.
Elaborate on that.
So when you operate in a world of free, right? Showing up for people, there's no consequence to it, right?
Okay.
So when you give someone something for free, right, it has no value to them. So you don't know if they're going to take care of it, right? They're going to do the right thing. They're going to show up, right? Because free has no consequence. And then free is a figment of your imagination because when you do for free, it's not that people value you, you're readily accessible.
Right.
So what happens is when now you've created a place where you know the value of your time and you're now putting a marker on your time and now no one's showing up, you're now questioning yourself.
Right.
It's just you overexerted the value of free, of where you placed it, right? So people had access to you. So it's like, no, I don't have to look. Let me call Terrell. I ain't got to do that. Let me call Terrell. I ain't got to do that. Let me call Terrell. So now when you like, yo, listen, right? Who I send this invoice to,
Nobody know.
right? Now all of a sudden, don't nobody call no more,
Right. That's right. That's right.
right? Or I always tell the worst thing in the world is when somebody call you that they'll ask you to do something for free. You're not available, and they'll pay somebody to do what they've always asked you to do for free.
Right.
Right? We live in
It's
this
happened
world.
plenty of times.
Yeah, we live in this world. And that's the part where I always tell my guys, like, let's find some money. So everybody's happy.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's a part of it. But we definitely got to do an episode on dad-ish, right? I think I have a PhD in wild dad-ish, right? I because my oldest son grew up with me and my brothers when we were young. So I had my son. I was 18, bro. When I tell you, we've
Bro, you say you from Seth
yo
Moore. I can
listen.
just
I
imagine what the
listen.
chicken.
My son has experienced some of the funniest, wildest things known to man. But I'll hold on to that. And then it's like my other kids got the chill side of me, right? Like, and then is that one child that's very competitive, think they could beat you at basketball, think they could beat you at darts, right?
Yeah.
And then it's you always have that brainiac child, the one that kind of is like your therapist,
Yeah.
like yeah. So my I call it little OG, but Sierra, that she was my therapist, like that one child that you can go and talk to, and you be like, I got something on your mind, and she kind of just be like, it's okay. You know how you got to look at that, and she like gives you this philosophical thing, and
That's fire.
she's like 15, 16 years old. Like yeah,
That's fire, bro.
that's my therapist. So you have these little things, right, and then it's like at the different parts of it, and then that's what happens with life, man. But I think life is amazing.
I do. Listen, I think so too. With all of the ups and the downs and
Despite
the
the
ins and
obstacles.
outs and the disappointments, my mother-in-law put me on some game, bro. I remember I got really excited about some shit, and it was like right there, and the day of, shit fell through.
Mm,
She said disappointments sometimes happen for good reason, bro. And ever since she told me that day, I'm a firm believer that everything that's supposed to happen, that does happen. If it's bad, maybe there's a lesson in it, but I try to minimize how bad it can be. But all of the good that happens to me is because the creator was like, all right, you ready?
right.
You ready? You know what I mean? But we have sat here and the energy that you possess, we can sit here and talk
Right.
until the
Right.
sun goes down,
Right.
bro, and then comes back up
Right.
about life and fatherhood and business and community affairs and fuck shit and all of
Mm-hmm.
the anything that you can think of.
Right.
I just want to reiterate how much of a pleasure it was to be able to sit down and speak with you. Number one, I thank you for giving me the time of your day to be able to give me time of day to just sit here and just talk to the beloveds who may have wanted to know either one of us even more than they already have. Uh, my prayer is obviously this is not the last time that you're
Word
ever
up.
a guest of the show. I pray that this is the race to 100 million.
Right.
You know what I'm
Let's
saying?
do
So
it.
that we can provide something.
Let's do it.
Once again, I have been joined by the legendary Pop, one of the unofficial elected officials of Newark. Um, this has been another installment of You Think Podcast. I don't necessarily have a title for this episode, but I didn't need a title. When Bro told me that he was ready to record and speak about what he has going on, I pulled up. So with that, I thank you for tuning into another installment. This is You Think Podcast. I leave you with, actually, before I do that, is there anything you want to say to the people before we break out?
Do it anyway. They're gonna talk about you. Make sure you do it in decency and order. Love on somebody. Operate in a place of gratitude, grace, and empathy. But always remember, around these parts, we walk with fire, and we don't waste our grind or our greatness.
Damn. Um, I really don't have no follow up to that other than the things that I say to myself and that I say to you every time I speak or see any of you. Don't do nothing to nobody you wouldn't want done to you, bro. This is You Think Podcast. I am your host, Mr. Hughes. Thank you for tuning in. And until next time, salute. That was fucking amazing. That was fucking amazing, bro.